All right, today we're jumping into a grand detective story, a quest that's been going on for literally millennia. We're going to trace humanity's epic search for purpose, following the clues left behind by some of the world's greatest thinkers. At the very heart of this investigation is one single massive question. It's a question that has honestly haunted and inspired people from the very beginning. Is there a point to all this? Or are we just kind of adrift in a cosmos that doesn't really care? This fundamental conflict right here is what gave birth to philosophy in the first place. So where does our story begin? Well, it's a surprising place. Not in some quiet, peaceful university hall, but right in the middle of the chaos of the ancient Greek marketplace. And this quote? It tells you everything. Philosophy wasn't some kind of hobby for the rich. It was an emergency response to a huge societal crisis. Think about it like this. Before these big market economies took off, your purpose was all tied up in your community, your role in the bigger picture. But then, as commerce just exploded in ancient Greece, life started to feel, well, quantified. All of a sudden, everything had a price tag. Society felt less like a tight-knit community and more like a bunch of disconnected individuals all competing with each other. And that shift, it just dissolved all those shared values. And for the first time, this deep skepticism, you could even call it a kind of nihilism, started to creep in. Okay, so this is where our quest really begins. The original mission of philosophy was to fight back against this rising tide of meaninglessness. It was all about finding a new, solid, unshakable foundation for truth and justice in a world that felt like it was completely losing its way. And to pull this off, the early philosophers came up with a really powerful tool, the dialectic. The best way to think of it is as a structured way of thinking, a specific method for cutting through all the noise and confusion of everyday life to get to a higher, more fundamental truth. This was their secret weapon in the war against nihilism.
And here's a brilliant, simple way to understand how it works. Your car keys, right? On their own, they're just useless little pieces of metal. Their entire purpose is defined by their relationship to something that is not them, the car. See? The dialectic is all about understanding things not in isolation, but through their contradictions and their connections to a much bigger picture.
So what was this bigger picture they were searching for? They had a name for it, the telos. This was the ultimate prize of their quest. It was the first principle, the ultimate purpose that grounds all of reality. The idea was if they could just discover the telos, they could rebuild a firm foundation for ethics, for justice, and for meaningful life. It was the whole shebang.
And believe me, they took this search so seriously. Just look at Plato's training plan for the leaders of his ideal society. It's this lifelong, absolutely grueling process. You've got physical training, mental training, practical training, all of it designed just to prepare a person to even begin to understand the ultimate good. This wasn't some weekend workshop, it was a 50-year journey. But, the investigation didn't just stop with having a cool method. Philosophers like Aristotle, they wanted proof. They set out to show that the universe itself wasn't just some random accident, but that it was actively, purposefully being drawn towards some kind of final goal.
And for almost 2,000 years, Aristotle's idea of a purpose-driven cosmos was the dominant view. But then came a massive plot twist. The scientific revolution started to, piece by piece, dismantle that entire worldview. First, you had mechanistic science, which saw a universe of particles and forces, not goals. Then, thermodynamics came along and predicted a heat death, an end in total chaos and disorder. And finally, the very definition of what science is changed. And this was kind of the final blow. A new rule for what counts as science came on the scene, falsifiability. Basically, for a theory to be scientific, there has to be some way, some observation that could prove it wrong. But think about it. How could you ever disprove the existence of a cosmic telos? You can't. And by this new standard, that whole ancient philosophical quest was suddenly, well, unscientific. And the result was this deep cultural shift, a widespread feeling of cosmological pessimism. Science, our most powerful tool for understanding the world, seemed to have proven that the universe was fundamentally meaningless. The original quest, it looked like it was over. The case had gone completely cold. So this was a true turning point in our detective story, a full-blown crisis, where the trail for finding a universal purpose just vanished. It really seems like the marketplace and that feeling of nihilism had won after all.
But just when the case seemed totally closed, modern science itself turned up a shocking new piece of evidence, a clue that has some physicists thinking it points right back towards the idea of a purpose-driven universe. It's called the anthropic principle.
So what is it? Well, this is the core idea. Physicists discovered that the fundamental constants of our universe, I'm talking about things like the strength of gravity, are exquisitely, precisely fine-tuned for life. If any of these numbers were off by even the tiniest fraction, poof, no stars, no planets, no consciousness. It seems the universe is suspiciously just right for us to be here talking about it. So, just like that, our detective story is back on. Science, the very thing that seemed to end the quest for meaning, has now provided the most tantalizing new leads. And it's forcing us to reconsider everything. And this brings us to a huge crossroads. What do we do now? Do we use these new clues to try and resurrect that ancient quest for a single ultimate telos? Or has this 2,000-year journey taught us that maybe there's a completely different way to even approach the search for truth? Let's explore that other path for a second. It's a modern idea called intellectual humility. Now, this isn't a method for finding one final answer. It's more of a mindset for how we even conduct the search, especially in a world that's just overflowing with information and competing certainties. It's really all about knowing what you don't know. And this table just lays out the two paths perfectly. On one side, you have the ancient dialectical quest, which aimed for absolute certainty by finding that one single truth that solves everything. But on the other side, you have intellectual humility. It's about pursuing truth by acknowledging our limits, being willing to reevaluate what we believe, and, this is the most important part, being open to the idea that we might actually be wrong. It's not a tool for ending the debate, but for having better ones. And this brings us to a final and maybe kind of paradoxical chapter in our quest. Maybe the whole point isn't just about finding the answer. Maybe it's about embracing a totally new kind of wisdom, the strength and the clarity that comes from really understanding the limits of what we can know. So that leaves us with one last big, provocative question. After this epic, millennia-long investigation, which path really holds more value for us today? Is it the heroic attempt to uncover a single, cosmic purpose for everything? Or is it the humble, and maybe even wiser, journey of accepting the limits of our own understanding? The investigation continues.